Hey everyone, it's Sleepy Reader. I am entering a contest, or at least responding to a contest. I don't really enter contests anymore. I'm not even sure what the prizes on this one are. But it is Rez Reed's first contest, and I thought I would salute her by entering. And she has lots of interesting questions, although to longtime followers of my channel, the answers probably won't be much of a surprise. So, her first part of the contest was you have to follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and one of the other ones. Anyway, I'm following her on all of them, I think, but I only do Twitter and YouTube, really. I don't know why she wants, I guess she wants followers. Um, and what are some of the reasons why I subscribe to Rez's channel? That's her next question. The initial reason I checked out her channel was Terrence Comic Crack talked about her, and said how great she was, and that we should go over and subscribe to her channel. So I obeyed, and he was right. It was a really cool channel, talking about a lot of stuff other people don't talk about, full of excitement and fun for comics. So yeah, I'm super glad I subscribed to your channel, Rez. And as you know, I watch frequently. You put out a lot of material. I don't get through all of the videos at the moment because I only have so much time. But I love what I watch, and I think I do watch a lot. So now we get to the harder questions. Name 3 of your favorite artists' illustrators. And it's very generous to say 3 because some people might say your favorite, and there'd be no way to do that. Well, there might be a way to do that, but really, I'd like to name my top 25 illustrators. But and I think of these people as artists, not illustrators, artists and storytellers. But so my top 3 artists are Jack Kirby. So I'm going to show a lot of Jack Kirby. I have probably, I don't know, 20% of my collection is probably Jack Kirby stuff, and of course another 50% of the collection is stuff of people working in Jack Kirby's shadow, ripping Jack Kirby off, imitating him, or just being asked by their employers to draw more like Jack Kirby. I love Jack Kirby, and so that is very boring and cliche, especially for someone who likes superhero comics. But that's the way it is. I love Jack Kirby, and I seem to keep loving him more. I don't. There's a certain nostalgia level to it, and I recognized early on as a kid that I love Jack Kirby. I think when I got my DC first of his DC Fourth World comics, or maybe I read a reprint of the issue where the Fantastic Four first go to the Inhumans' hidden refuge. One of those two is where I first fell in love with Jack Kirby. But so I have Jack Kirby in every size, shape, and form. I can't stop buying Jack Kirby. I was too lazy this evening to go into my comic boxes, so I'm just going to show you books. But I got Jack Kirby. I've got Jack Kirby. Let's see what's on the inside there. Bam! Let's see. Jack Kirby in so many different forms. They used to publish this Awesome Kirby Collector, a quarterly magazine devoted to just Kirby trivia and Kirby analysis and what have you. Although 64-page special, I'm going to link to him below. His entry to Rez, he did some analysis of Kirby that maybe hasn't been done before. He should be writing an article for the Jack Kirby Collector. But yeah, how many artists have a quarterly giant magazine devoted to them? Jack Kirby is the only one, at least at the moment, that I know of. So yeah, I'm gonna just keep going a little longer with all this Jack Kirby goodness. What's the point of doing a video unless I can show you some stuff? Um, I could just all night show you Jack Kirby stuff. Let's see, can I find the Glory Boat? I think I can. These are original pages from what may have been the first comic that made me blow up my head about Jack Kirby and want to forevermore buy more and more Jack Kirby comics. Of course, as a kid, I tried to draw like Jack Kirby. And he's easy to imitate up to a point, and then I think you reach kind of a wall where you just can't get past, and you can't be like Kirby, even though it looks easy at first. But anyway, yeah, so, oh, is there one more here on this pile I've made? Yeah. Oh, who can forget Commandy? So many people in the community love Commandy. So many people, I think, who were young readers in the early to mid 70s, just remember Commandy as a comic book, or maybe it was mid to late 70s that it ran. I'm not even sure. No, it can't be late 70s, because in the I think around 76 he returned to Marvel. If only they'd kept him at DC and made him happy and just let him keep doing Commandy and OMAC and New Gods and all that other stuff. So where do we go from Kirby? Well, I go to Will Eisner's The Spirit, and Will Eisner in general as the second of my three most. I can't, when I start thinking about my biggest favorites, they are intertwined in the history of comics. And so because I've collected so many comics and read so many comics, that history has grown more and more important to me. I can't even open this giant book. So yeah, if I were really devoted to, I have 4 or 5 of these Kirby ones. I need to buy there's one other of the Will Eisner ones. I ought to buy that, but it just didn't seem as urgent to me. But I have a ton of Will Eisner stuff, and I keep collecting more, getting the same, to some extent, the same Spirit stories over and over again. Although I think, some of them get reprinted a lot and some don't. But I have a lot of fun digging up and coming across this stuff. I first discovered Will Eisner in the War and Spirit magazines that were published in the mid-70s, and I was 14 when I found them, and it kind of another level of blowing my mind. I was really into superhero comics. I kind of knew about a few other things like Asterix and Tintin, but then I found these Spirit magazines and was amazed. So yeah, that's just a small sampling of Spirit stuff. So then third favorite artist. This is embarrassing because I only have a few pieces by this artist, and I hope to get the complete works in hardback someday soon. Beyond Kirby and Eisner, there's so many I could start picking out, from like R. Crumb and the Hernandez brothers to Neil Adams and Steve Rude and Paul Galassi and all kinds of current artists who are amazing. Bernie Wrightson too. But it seemed to me, since I was going for what I think of as these giant pillars, that the other big giant pillar to me is Mobius. And that's become, he was always like the coolest artist of that heavy metal group of the European artists that I knew of, both because of the way his art looked and because of the nature of the stories he was involved in, often as writer, but not in the case of what I'm showing you right here, and the quality of his storytelling. So you were drawn deep into a zany dream world that made sense while you were reading the Mobius and entranced you, and then you wanted to draw like Mobius, and you only wanted things that look like Mobius when you're reading Mobius. And we have lots of artists that kind of follow now in the modern era along with the Will Eisner and the Jack Kirby kind of typical American influences, there's a lot of Moebius influence going around, from Chris Burnham, Frank Quietly, Jeff Darrow are the very obvious ones, but there's so much other, Jeff Stokely, I believe, or I'm not even thinking of all of them, but Brandon Graham. There's just so much that when I look at their work, I feel like they are partially there because of Moebius. So those are my top 3 comic book artists. Name 3 of your favorite writers. This got trickier. So one writer stands out as writer, period, in big letters, writer, and everything he's written that I've ever tried has at least, some bits of greatness in it, and much of what he's written has tons of greatness in it, and that is Alan Moore. He's written a wide variety of stuff, and you can't think that it's only because he was working with artist A or artist B, because whatever artist he's working with, it is, sort of major, interesting, important work. I thought I had more of his books here to show, but anyway, that's it. But yeah, Alan Moore stands head and shoulders as the writer, and it's hard for me to think of other writers to compare at that level, which is a shame. And I hate to lionize Alan Moore. I mean, he just recently pissed me off on some public thing where he said anyone reading superheroes right now is just a man baby who can't grow up, basically, which is the same old thing we've been hearing forever. And, from him, that just seems pretty nasty. And he assumes that because I read Batman, I'm not reading Providence. I'm just this man baby sucking my thumb. I don't think, maybe someday I'll read his 1,400-page novel that just came out, Jerusalem. I think what he was doing, which is the most cowardly thing of all, is he wanted to impress the literary book crowd, so he decided to piss on the comic book people as a way to impress his new friends or something, talk about junior high school. So anyway, but despite that, I can't think of any other writer who, as a writer alone, comes to that level. So I'm going to fudge my other 2 favorite writers. I'm going to say Will Eisner is another one of my favorite writers. He's a fabulous, basically a short story writer. Even his graphic novels feel more like bits of, or the ones that I've read, bits of short stories sewn together. But I mean, his art always served the story, but he was a very clever, very compact, concise storyteller. He did at one point have a quarterly magazine devoted to him. It didn't last that long, but it was more devoted to his storytelling. And and I think his influence is huge, and I will always, many of his spirit stories will stay with me forever. I'll take them to the grave. So it's hard to compare someone like Will Eisner, who's a writer-artist, to Alan Moore, who's just a writer. I know he drew a few of his own comics at the very beginning of his career in England. Be interesting to see those, but the little snippets I've seen of them weren't that impressive looking. Okay, and here's the one that was the hardest pill for me to swallow, but if I just think of all my reading and all that's important to me as a comic book reader, I have to pick Stan Lee as my 3rd favorite writer. But it's really Stan Lee and his collaborators, and whatever alchemy for a while, for 10 years, Stan Lee managed to pull off with Steve Ditko and Jack Kirby and John Romita and John Buscema and a few other artists, that created a magic, that created a whole universe that we're still enjoying, and that I have enjoyed, since I was 10 years old. So, Jack Kirby. Oh, you know what? I think this is actually a Roy Thomas volume. Sorry. Not Jack Kirby, Stan Lee. But Jack Kirby's in there too. I mean, I almost could have picked Jack Kirby as my 3rd favorite writer. Um, but I couldn't quite go there. I'm not sure why. So yeah, those are my favorite artists and favorite writers. There's really a bazillion more of each. That second tier is enormous of very good writers, most of whom are more modern, I would suppose. Like Warren Ellis and Jonathan Hickman and Rick Remender and Ed Brubaker and all kinds of other people. But I also have a lot of love for Marv Wolfman and Roy Thomas and other names will come to me later. Mike Barron from his Nexus work and Badger work. Okay, name 3 Holy Grail graphic novels, comics, or illustrated novels. I'm trying to think if there's anything like, by Holy Grail, I mean, something that you just are dying to own. And I'm trying to think if there's anything I'm dying to own. Excuse me. Dying to own that I don't own yet. This imaginary, oversized collection of Mobius comics. That would be a Holy Grail if someone would ever publish that. Let's see. Other Holy Grails might be some of my favorite Will Eisner comics in their original newspaper insert form. Those are kind of expensive, so I say Holy Grail, but I'm not sure. I don't want to spend too much money on too many of them. I'm quite happy with the reprints, actually, and from the little I've seen, it's hard for those things to stay in good condition at all. So I might want just one of them for my collection. I have some that weren't actually drawn by Will Eisner, but another 3 Holy Grails. Okay, so I did not prepare properly for this. I wrote notes and I said I'm really not sure on this. But a Holy Grail would almost have to be something that doesn't exist in reprints, because although it's nice to have it, I'm not such a collector that I feel like I'm gonna die without the original. But I already own one original weird fantasy from EC, but I might like another. That doesn't seem like a very good Holy Grail. Okay, or yeah, well, it would be nice to own Action Comics #1. I'll leave it at that. Okay, what comic genre are you trying to break into? I don't know. I really don't know. I might be trying to break out of superhero comics every now and then. I don't know. Is there a genre I haven't tried or that I would like to like more? Is that the idea? If there were some cool romance comics, I don't know if Archie comics count for that. People talk about romance comics, but I haven't really read many of those, so let's say that's what I'm trying to break into. Tell me your 3 favorite genre of comics. Well, I would be lying if I didn't say superheroes, because obviously a huge amount of my comics are superheroes. I think then science fiction. I love science fiction in all its forms. Movies, TV shows, books, novels, short story collections, most of all. But I love science fiction comics. And I think we're kind of in a golden age of science fiction comics, because for a long time there weren't that many of them. And a lot of them were very underwhelming at times during the periods that I've been reading comics. But in the last 10, 15 years, there's been a lot of really good science fiction. And then, so a third favorite genre of comics, I was almost going to say autobiographical comics, but I've burnt out on those, so they're not really a favorite anymore. And sort of the genre that I'm maybe moving into as a new favorite is, I guess what you'd call humorous kids comics, like the Little Dot comics that I showed a while ago, and Little Lotta, and maybe Richie Rich. And I'd like to explore more of that. I've been picking up a lot of it recently, but I'd like to explore that more. For some reason, well, and Archie kind of fits in there too, the older Archie, little Archie. So, do you have any? So her last question is: do you have any additional hobby or other collecting other than comics? If so, what are they? Well, I mentioned science fiction there, and so I have throughout collected, like, I get a lot of science fiction novels and the like, but also more obscure things like old science fiction magazines. This is actually relatively recent in my collection, recent of vintage because it's from the 70s, but I have a lot of 40s and 50s, mostly 50s and 60s old science fiction magazines. I like to get these nonfiction about science fiction. Often they're kind of academic books, so I like to collect those. I like to collect small press publications in science fiction, so small press prose, not indie comics or whatnot. More unusual editions of authors' works. At one point, I was doing a lot of pursuing books, science fiction books that were published in England but never published in the United States. So that kind of collecting, if you can call it collect. I don't think of it as collecting. I don't wrap these in bags or anything. But I suppose it's a pursuit, a hobby. Another pursuit and hobby has been music, especially going to live music, but that fell off a lot, as you can imagine, once I had kids, both because it's expensive and takes time, and now it's really expensive because you got to get a babysitter and everything. And you got to convince your tired wife to go too, or go without her, or whatever. But I'm in the music acquiring field. I've gone back to vinyl a lot, and I like to find interesting and unusual vinyl when I can. But comic books are the big priority. I'd say another hobby that was big in my life before kids was drawing. I used to go to life drawing sessions, where you'd pay $6 or $7 and they'd have a live model and you draw for 3 hours. And I don't know where all those drawings are right now. But I used to draw big charcoal drawings or big ink drawings, a lot of gesture drawings and such. And you might say writing fiction is a bit of a hobby too. It once was a very serious pursuit for a while, but not anymore. Okay, so thanks for Rez for getting me to do an overly long contest video. Can't believe I spent 23 minutes on this. But there you go. I'm a blabbermouth. If you don't subscribe to Rez, check her out. She's, really cool. And I will talk to you all later.